Hi, my name is Judy Stark. Welcome to Writing Historical Fiction using photographs as primary documents as the starting point. Agate Fossil Beds National Monument has a rich library of photographs that can be used by students and teachers in order to stimulate good writing. Most people think about inspiration for stories coming from diaries and journals or newspaper accounts. The pictures from this time period are also a rich mine of information and stimulating for writing. What do you know about historical fiction? What does it mean to you? Where do you think people get their ideas to write it? Take a minute to discuss with a partner or in a group what you think it is. At this point, you should have a copy of the handout, and I'd like to go over parts of it together, using research and your knowledge of history to bring a story to life. A historical narrative is a story that takes place during a major event in history. As Harry Sidebottom, author of the Warrior of Rome series, said, "The past is another country. They not only do things differently there, they think about things differently." He also stated, "Unless you know how your characters wash, dress, cook, and eat, go to the toilet, get married, what class they belong to, where they live, and so on, your story is going to stutter to a stop pretty quickly." So, when you're starting to write, you need to think about the time period that you're going to write. And today we're going to choose to focus on the 1800s because the photograph that we're going to use is from that time period. So we're going to look at that photograph, and that's going to constitute our research for the day. But when you do historical fiction, you do need to have a good grasp of the time period. You need to know the correct dates so you understand the setting. You wouldn't put a modern automobile back in the 1800s. People would have been using buggies or riding the train. They wouldn't have had an automobile to take them around. Okay. You want to have the characters dressed properly, talking properly, and doing those things. So when you get ready to write your story, you kind of want to have a timeline. You want to have the following in it. You want to have facts about your person, the where, the when, the why. You want to have sensory details, what the character would have seen, would have heard, would have tasted, smelled, or touched. What would your character think? What did he or she feel about what was going on around him or her? Okay. What actions does your character take as a result of the things that he or she thinks or feels? And what does your character say or hear? And part of this, you want to get your people into your story fairly quickly. The opening sentences are very important. Consider these couple of excerpts from different books. "I could hear a roll of muffled drums, but I could see nothing but the lacing on the bodice of the lady standing in front of me, blocking my view of the scaffold. Philippa Gregory, the other Boleyn girl." Eleanor woke at dawn. The tall candle that had been left to burn all night was almost a stub, and even through the closed shutters she could hear the cockerels on roosts and dung heaps crowing the city of Poitiers awake. Elizabeth Chadwick, the Summer Queen. Notice how each of those authors has established the time period and what time of day and place and what the main character is seeing and hearing, and it draws you immediately into the story. You know where and when the things are happening. You may not know what is going on or for whom, but you have a good idea of what time period in which the story is taking place. When you write, you should have a theme. It still has to be interpreted within the context of the time period. Loyalty in third century Greece is probably different than fifth century Greece. How does coming of age change when you're in ancient Egypt when instead of the 20th century? What customs and celebrations follow? What constitutes madness when witches are burned at the stake? Okay, the plot. It has to make sense for the time period. It's going to be shaped by the historical events taking place at that time, and especially if you choose to write about a famous historical figure. Make sure that you're telling the story, not just writing the history. Conflict. Remember, a good story always has to have some sort of conflict. Okay, as with the theme and the plot, the conflict has to be realistic for the time and place that you chose it to happen. The readers want to understand the reason for the conflict that you present. An unmarried woman in the 15th century might be forced into marriage with a difficult man, or she might be forced to join a convent. Both choices lead to conflict. Is she going to do what her family wants her to, or is she going to strike off on her own? Which would have been very difficult given that time and place. A man from the same time period may also be forced into marriage. He might also have to be not planned on becoming the head of the family, but as a result of a catastrophe, has to step up and take the reins. Or he too might be forced into joining the church when he really doesn't want to. World building. You are in charge of building this world. You're creating it. You have to know the customs, the social arrangements, the family environments, the religious structures, all of those different kinds of things. And that's why having a glaring error makes your story suspect. When we read or watch a movie, we all engage in the willing suspension of disbelief, which means that we know we're reading a story or we know that we're watching a film, but we choose to set that aside. And if the story is good enough, we forget that we're reading or we forget that we're watching a film. But something that doesn't make sense in terms of the story will throw us out of the story. And if it's a glaring enough error, it will make some readers quit the story entirely because they can no longer trust your narrative. When you're researching, there are different things. I'm not going to go through the whole list that there is, but there are several things that you should know depending on the type of story that you're going to write. Now that you have some idea of the things that you might try to capture when you're writing historic fiction and the details that help it make it more realistic for your reader, let's try our hand at examining a photograph from agate. Photographs help a great deal in figuring out many of the details that make a story realistic because you as the writer can describe what you see. The one I've chosen to look at today is the one of Kate Graham Cooke. Take some time to examine the photograph and write down as many details about Kate, the horse, and her surroundings as you can. Use the worksheet we went over to help you hone your detective skills. Now that you have had a chance to compare with a partner what you saw with Kate, let's go over this. What do you know about Kate from this picture? How is she dressed? If you didn't know this picture was from the 1800s, what details of her clothing would make you think it's not from recent times? What can you speculate from her body language? Does she look relaxed, or does it look like she's tense? Look at where her hands are. Look at her grip on the reins. Are the reins loose and down on the horse's neck, or pulled up tight? Where's Kate's hand that's not holding the reins? Why do you think it was in that position? Why might that be? What do you know about her horse? Does the horse look relaxed? Hint, look at his ears and his feet. Based on the bridle, how well broken or school is this horse? Has he been ridden a lot? Is he her favorite mount? Is he something that she can trust? Or is this a young horse that she is uncertain of? From her clothing, you can tell that Kate is riding side saddle. But did you know that there were two different types of side saddles? One type was more English and forced the rider into a rather unnatural position. The other was based on the Western saddle and allowed the rider to be more free of movement and actually could participate in a more athletic riding of the horse than the English side saddle at the time. From the bit of the saddle blanket, you can see which type of saddle do you think Kate had and why. How does that impact what you might think about who she is? What do you know about her surroundings? What time of year do you think it is? Is Kate inside a corral or outside? What about those details might impact your story? Why is there another horse next to her? Did you notice that other horse's tail next to Kate on her right or your left? Why might that other horse be there? Is Kate liking that other horse there? Is Kate's horse liking that other horse there? How might this impact the story that you wanted to tell? Now, do you know enough about Kate to write your story? If you don't, here's an anecdote or a bit of Kate's biography from the Agate site to give you some further insight into her character and her writing ability. Kate Graham, the younger daughter of E.B. and Mary Graham, was a scholar and musician and taught herself French. She married James Cooke, an adventurer and forward-thinking man whom the family met in Cheyenne. Kate and James first lived in New Mexico on a ranch that he managed, then came back to Sioux County, where they bought the ranch from her father and changed the name to Agate Springs Ranch. She had found fossils near the Agate Fossil Hills and shared that with James, who later contacted the early paleontologists. They had two sons, Harold and John, and she ran the household and raised the two boys, facing wolves, rattlesnakes, and ranch debt until she became ill in 1909. She was quite a horsewoman and once rode a bucking horse side saddle down the streets of Cheyenne. The family rode together at the ranch where Kate sometimes rode Billy American Horse, a gift from American Horse, who was a Native American or First People friend of the family. Now that you have those extra details, how can they add to your story? You now know that Kate was an excellent rider and could even stay on a bucking horse when riding side saddle like she is in the picture. You might decide to incorporate the bucking incident into your story. Maybe that is why Kate seems tense. Maybe Billy American Horse was feeling fresh and frisky because she hadn't ridden him much over the winter, although his mane and tail appeared to be brushed more than if he had just been run in from winter range. Why might a horse buck? What could cause him to spook? Strangers in town? A dog that runs underfoot? A gunshot? As you can see, putting the picture with a biographical sketch gives you the idea for a wonderful story. Now that we've gone back through the picture and pointed out some of the details and read the brief bio of Kate from the Agate website, you should be ready to write. Go ahead and write for however long your teacher thinks you should. Remember that historical fiction is just like any other fiction. You need characters, a setting, and a conflict. How well and how quickly your protagonist solves the problems represented by the conflict is totally up to you. Be ready to share out what you've written and where you think you would like to take your story at the end of the time that your teacher gives you. You've had some time to write, and hopefully you feel as if it has not been enough. Go ahead and share with a partner or your writing group what you've done and where you would like to go in order to finish the story. Using the worksheet, what is one thing that you noticed in each other's stories? How did using the photograph and the worksheet impact your writing? Have your ideas about writing historical fiction changed? Do you have some old family photos that you could use to help drive your writing? Can you get some of the stories behind those pictures to give your writing some of the vocabulary and realism that it needs by using dialogue from a person who may have heard frontier people speak? Thank you for participating in writing historical fiction from photographs. I would like a chance to read your finished stories when you complete them. My email is listed at the end of this slideshow. Happy writing!